Hey Deepit, thanks a lot for agreeing to do this. Looking forward to the chat.
Hi, Aviral. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I hope I don't spill the beans on things that I don't shouldn't be doing on.
Awesome. So Deepit, we started with this new question with our guests. So you are the second person to experiment with it. Um, there's a question that Peter Thiel asks a lot of people in his interviews, which I particularly like. What is one truth that you believe in, which very few people agree with you on?
I think people think that fulfillment comes from like in general, like from achieving your milestones. I think fulfillment comes from progressing towards achieving your milestones.
Hmm. And how have you used that in your entrepreneurial career or in general? Has that helped you a lot?
Yes, I think that's definitely something that has helped me in general. So there has been phases before my entrepreneurial career where I struggled a bit to understand what's going wrong in terms of feeling fulfilled,
Hmm.
and that's where kind of gradually I started articulating this and understood this. But I think very few people would agree that it's just the progress that makes them fulfilled, not
I
actually making it to the goal.
understand. No, that's awesome. Like journey more important than the goals. And I think the way you put it is quite interesting because that itself is what fulfills you. You're not even looking at the milestones. So awesome. So Deepit, you've built a very interesting org called Inshorts. But we'd love to start with going back to the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about early days? Any experiences that shaped you? Any ideas that you gained, which probably helped you become an entrepreneur? Maybe you'd love to start with that.
Definitely, Aviral. I think I always think this is a thing that I use always, that all companies are basically product of its times. So
Right.
I think that is something that kind of has always been a root kind of for me. So it's very important that an entrepreneur tries to channelize what its time is wanting the entrepreneur to channelize. Otherwise, the business will never be a success. As people
Right.
say that the biggest important single determinant of success of an entrepreneurial venture is the time, right? So
Mm.
whether you've timed the market, but there is no way to really time the market by logically analyzing it, right?
Mm.
You can analyze the market trends, you can build a team by reaching out to people, you can sell stories, make people convinced. But if the market is not ready for your idea at the moment,
Right.
you won't be successful. So I think very early when we started, so I was in college and me and my co-founder Azhar, we were school friends. We were
Mm.
in different colleges. He was in IIT Delhi. I was in IIT Kharagpur.
And where did you
And
school? Both of you? Where did
so
you go to school?
both of us did our schooling in Delhi. We actually knew each other not from the school, but from our coaching institutions, which were
Okay.
the more important schools, I would say, at
Correct.
that point
Correct.
of
Correct.
time. Yeah.
Right.
So I think we are in a dual schooling kind of
Right.
ecosystem at the moment. So yeah, so that's where I met him, and incidentally, we scored the same marks in IIT,
Wow.
which is a very
Okay.
big coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, same.
yeah. So after that, so once we were in our respective colleges, we used to talk a lot about what are the interesting problems. So problem solving was very core to us. We used to discuss problem solving a lot, like whether it was talking about algorithms or what's been taught in our algo courses, or what uh, what's being built out there, what are the products that are being built out there, and also some really academic problems. So all of that was part of our discussions. So from there, I think very early on, we felt that the startup ecosystem at that point of time, this is 2009 to 12 that we are talking about, there was nothing that there were some early successes happening at that point of time. Flipkart was just about to come.
Right.
Uh, it was raising its Series B somewhere around that time. And so it was informing the people in the college campuses, people like us who were students, that, okay, this is also a very interesting path to follow. And yeah, we wanted to jump right in because somehow we were already experimenting with multiple ideas, and we tried out a couple of projects before Inshorts as well, and those didn't succeed. And the biggest learning at that point of time, pre-Inshorts, was so we were building this product for 1 year before even like talking to the customers. So all the YC content that's very, very widely available today, that talk to your users, don't miss talking to your users, we learned that the hard way. We actually spent a year just building a product.
Right.
And once we hit the market, we understood that we were not really building a product business. We were catering to a services oriented market. So there was no way we could have built one right product that could have scaled the market. So yeah, so that was a big learning, which kind of shaped a lot of how we did Inshorts, like being very, very frugal and very, very mindful in terms of how can we test things very, very quickly, and in a very, very lean way. Yeah, so the lean thinking part came from our mistakes before even we launched Inshorts.
Got it. And what was these, what were these mistakes that you made? If you can talk about the early product, which helped you get some customer insights. I know a lot of entrepreneurs today, they're able to even raise pre-product, they're able to raise pre-plan, they're able to raise pre-company even, right?
Yeah,
Uh, so it's a very different paradigm. And, I think you're talking about 2012, 13.
yeah.
Right? So can you talk about those mistakes a little more? How did that help you? What was the product? What were the insights? Just for learning.
Yeah, so this is the product that we worked on before Inshorts, right?
Okay, got
No,
it.
I'm just asking
Yeah, yeah,
asking you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
So the main mistake I think was that although we were close to the problem, the product that we were trying to build was basically, we saw that most notice boards in college campuses are very, very physical, and the process to get onto the notice board, put up posters, etc., was also very, very physical, which was so unintuitive to me as a user, as a consumer, because everything was already being digital. So why did Facebook groups not already solve this problem? Like, why did so there were lots of digital options available. Reddit was there. There were some other platforms also. People had digital access, but still this notice board use case was not, hadn't migrated to the kind of the digital space. So that is the problem we started looking at. That how can we build a kind of network of public boards in a way which is kind of moderated and controlled by the institution that is supposed to have authority on it in an offline world as well. When we started building this product, we were just thinking from the consumer's standpoint, that how would consumers would like to kind of consume these boards or these notice boards or whatever. But we missed out a key stakeholder in that development process, was the person who's supposed to authorize the kind of what things will be posted on the board and what things won't be, because it cannot be like a true public space where anybody and everybody can come and post things, because that would lead to a lot of shit being posted on those boards.
right.
So we missed out that stakeholder completely, and we only started getting how that stakeholder thinks about this use case when we started kind of selling the product that we'd already built for a year. We thought
Right.
that we had created this really awesome product, everything. And then we understood that the stakeholders are actually universities and their admins, and those people haven't even had a good website. And they were saying कि यार हाँ ये तो तुमने अच्छा बनाया है, बट हमारे लिए तुम ERP भी बना दो, हमारे लिए तुम ये भी बना दो, हमारे लिए तुम वो भी बना दो. So they were much behind in terms of digital transformation to even think of a product like this as a SaaS platform. So I think that was a big mistake, like missing out on that stakeholder and how that stakeholder thinks completely in designing the product and even thinking about the success of that product.
Understand. So you basically build this product. You're like, yeah, this will work.
Yeah,
Did.
yeah.
So no, that's awesome. And
So GTM. So in a way, in today's lingo, it's GTM that we missed out on.
Right, correct. Very early GTM. And I think the other thing that's interesting is you were already hacking together stuff, right? You mentioned YC in their form, they asked you about, have you hacked stuff together before? I think this was an example of you already like figuring out you wanted to build something. Can you talk us through how this transitioned into Inshorts? Um, it's a very scary proposition to start a company, right? Especially if you gone to very good colleges, you have amazing options. You give that up and you start a company. So can you talk about that journey and the thought process there? Was it easy? Was it hard? What helped you make that happen?
Yeah. So interestingly, obviously starting up as a proposition itself at any stage of life is hard. But there are two more aspects to it that I'd like to highlight. One is that I think people from premium colleges like IITs have a very, very soft landing already laid out for them.
Right.
So, so I personally think that the risk appetite of a person who's graduating from IIT is highest when they have just graduated from IIT.
Right.
So that's one thing that I truly believe in. I think people won't agree with me on this, but risk appetite will only decrease with time, or increase with the wealth that you'll have after graduating from IIT. So
this may be your big answer too.
yeah. So secondly, but the second part is the kind of risk appetite or the hardness of the problem increases exponentially if you are trying to start up before graduating. So especially because it might be easier to start up, say, just after 1 year of job, right? Because you have done whatever your parents expect you to do. You've scored a good paying salary job, etc., and then you're saying, okay, I'll meet my own cost, I've saved enough, now I'm going to go and start something, live on frugal hostel room kind of situation and build something. Like, you take on that risk, complete risk on yourself. But when you are talking about starting up just before graduating, all of that has not panned out. The goals that your parents have kind of set out for you and are expecting from you, while that you'll complete your IIT degrees, you'll get a job, probably go to some other countries, be subject to brain drain and whatever. So it's very, very aspirational for them. Right at the cusp of the moment, if you announce to them, see, I don't want to complete my degree, right, or I want to take a year sabbatical, or because I want to start up, that seems very, very crazy to them. And it's just not the kind of thinking that they have kind of lived. That's not the ecosystem that they have lived. They have seen कि कोई अंकल चाचा आंटी कभी उन्होंने बिजनेस किया था, फेल हो गया. They have heard most stories of failures of businesses. And here I'm talking about like starting a business, starting a startup, and giving examples of like people in the Silicon Valley. They feel that we are being like talking about some rosy picture which doesn't really exist in reality. And perhaps at that time it didn't, right? So there were far and very few unicorns in India, very few great successes. But the way I think we kind of were able to negotiate all of that was that we made the right asks. So first we made the ask to our parents that give us a year. Our colleges allow us to go back and like do our degrees in case this fails. So setting a very small ask versus setting a big ask is always easier. So we set a very small ask कि एक साल दे दो, एक साल में अगर नहीं workout हुआ तो we'll come back, right? So एक साल में what happened? That kind of shaped us. So we got term sheets from some early accelerators. That time, directly accessing angel funding for college kids was not really possible. So we got some accelerator term sheets, which was great validation. One of them was T Labs, which was the Times Internet Accelerator. We were trying to build something in the content kind of space. So yeah, validation from them seemed like this is worth a shot. And that kind of convinced that thing, like that kind of shaped way from more things to happen down the year.
No, that's amazing how you like laid it out. You also called it a negotiation. I'm sure a lot of founders have done this, but they've never articulated it so well. How you laid it out, that we set small goals rather than saying, "Hey, I'm going to start a company and everything's now in complete chaos." You're like, "Give us a year, let us try if it works, if it doesn't." So I think that's quite fascinating. It's a very good playbook to use as well. If you are a founder who is very convinced on the idea, but your parents are not, and I think not only India but mostly in Asia, parents want more safe paths, at least safe in their heads, because they've grown up in scarcity, they've not seen these outsized outcomes. It's a very useful framework. So lovely. And when does this become Inshorts, and what was that trigger moment?
Yes. So just before we announced that we won't be, we want to take a year. So it was 2013, the vacation time, basically, March to June, is when we started kind of working on the Inshorts problem. The core insight was somehow it came from our earlier product that we were building, the notice board problem, where we had said that we'll have summaries for each notice that's been posted on the platform. We'll have a summary of 60 words for each notice that is going to go on that board. And while thinking of kind of seeding that platform, because initially there won't be any content on that on those boards, we thought that we'll have news posted on that platform and with 60 word summary, so that there is some hook for every user to kind of come and see कि अच्छा notice board में क्या है, कुछ नहीं है तो news तो मिलेगा ही. So that kind of triggered this idea that so Azhar kind of came to me, यार ये तो independently बहुत अच्छा idea बन सकता है, right? And we said, okay, yeah, that's interesting, let's try this out. And so that's how we said, okay, let's quickly launch a website. So we didn't even launch a website. The first thing we launched was a Facebook page where we were just giving 60 word summaries on the news stories. And yeah, so that's how and we got, I think, 3,000, 4,000 likes within the first few weeks, pretty much organically. Most of our college started each other's colleges started subscribing, at least in our batches, and we started getting customer feedback. So Inshorts, as we know today, is synonymous with a mobile application, right? Interestingly, we didn't even start with a mobile application. First,
Oh,
we
wow.
started with a Facebook page. Then we launched a website. Then
Facebook
some
MVP.
Yes. Facebook was our MVP, right? So obviously it can't be done so easily today.
Right.
That was a different time in terms of internet consumption, but yeah, it worked. Then we launched our website. Then someone came to us with a feedback. One of my college juniors, he was same from my department in computer science. He said, why don't you build an Android application? And if you want, I can help you build it also, you know? And we said, okay, let's try this out. And soon after we launched the Android application, the numbers were pretty clear. Like the repeat usage that the Android application was getting was much higher than the repeat usage our website used to get.
Right.
And we were able to retain customers. So that clearly told us that mobile application is the way to go. And that kind of gave us more and more organic traction for a while, till we were able to get our term sheet from T Labs and some other accelerator. And interestingly, we were doing only kind of 10 stories a day at that point of time.
It's a perfect point to transition into our topic for this week's episode, which is reimagining content consumption. And you spoke a lot about why you wanted to build something in the space and how it sort of evolved. 10 stories a day. Can you tell us a bit about how did that work and how that's changed, right? So was it someone reading through the stories and coming up with those summaries of 60 words? How did you scale that with tech?
Yeah, so interestingly, on the content piece, there's one thing that I'd like to highlight before going into this. So one core insight that we were kind of building all our kind of experiments with, even the previous product and Inshorts, was that the information space in general, the information consumption space in general in the market was very, very limited to innovations that were coming out of the valley. And we fundamentally thought that the market and the information consumption behavior is very, very different for India and Indian customers as compared to what you would think or what you would imagine how the Valley would consume information online.
It's really interesting. I mean, that's not obvious to me at all. Can you give us? Did you have some
Yeah.
examples of how behavior is
Yes,
different?
yes, definitely. So, so the biggest example is something that we know today. Obviously, we didn't know then,
Yeah.
but was that uh, people today like India is one of the only large mobile first internet consuming economies in the world, right? So just the fact that people will get access to internet primarily on mobile phone is a very, very different paradigm altogether as compared to what was in the valley. Like in the valley, people had already started using personal computers. Most people worth the advertisers money or worth pursuing for subscription revenue were already people who had desktops and were or using emails on desktops and probably subscribing to newsletters on desktops and had a homepage on desktops. So their information consumption behavior was very, very different as compared to people at that point in time in India who mostly, even if they had computers, used to switch on computers when they actually needed to print something, probably. Or and most people didn't have computers as well, right? It was restricted to school laboratories and things like that. So the whole internet consuming paradigm was very different. Like I remember that even in my childhood, I had to go to a internet cafe or a cyber cafe to kind of just do a Google search, like just for my summer project, right? So that was the ecosystem that we lived in. While most of my peers in the Valley or in the US or in the UK wouldn't have gone through that same thing, right? Everybody was using Google at home, most probably. So the access to information on the internet was very, very different, and what the needs are were very, very different. So, for example, when I come to the proposition of Inshorts, which is short form 60 words news or content in general, uh, just the fact that English is not our native language, and the fact that uh, we have it's a learned language. We don't talk to, like, most of us don't talk to our parents or in our homes in English, right? It's a mixed English Hindi kind of language, right? So just that fact influences psychologically to us that we would want to, whenever we are reading, we would want to read short things, and if we want to read something longer, we need to be really interested in it. If we are not interested in something, we really don't have the patience to read something long, which won't be something that a general English educated or English native language person would have the behavior to do. They would be okay reading something longer, even if they are not interested in
It's more
it.
cognitive effort to read in
Yes,
English, essentially. Yeah.
yes, yes. That's not the language that we think in or in which we talk to. So our success of Inshorts in India is very much related to the fact that it's an Indian insight that newspapers used to be kept around in our common rooms, in our colleges. And but we saw that people used to just go and skim the headlines, right? And if they were interested, they just read one paragraph. But so that's the scenario in one of the most premium colleges in the country. So I'm sure that so that's kind of something that gave us that insight that, okay, if our peer group doesn't want to really read news in the long form, then probably there's a lot more out there who want to do the same.
But it was sort of a latent insight that you'd seen this in college, you knew about it, but yeah,
Yes.
and how you translated that into uh, fascinating. Yeah, and now thanks a lot for that background. Now, if you can tell us a bit more about the actual process and how it works, how do you come up with those summaries?
Yeah. So as obviously, like, having that MVP mindset, we were both, so me, Azhar, and our third co-founder Anunay, all three of us were computer science, maths, and computing kind of students, and we knew that summarization as a technical field was existed, and there is automatic summarization that we can do up to a level. But to test out the MVP, it would have taken some bit of effort to kind of do that. So we
Yeah.
thought, let's just go for manual summaries, right? So
So three
it was
computer
me.
science graduates doing manual summaries of articles.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it was mostly me and Azhar who were doing the manual summaries, and we asked Adonai that why don't you keep building the platform and go ahead and implement the Android application and all of that. In the meantime, there were lots of debates internally that how much can summarization, what is the state of art of summarization? And we really wanted to understand that what is the state of art here? Is it even possible to do this level of manual summarization, or sorry, automatic summarization? So we really reached out to researchers in our field. Like we talked to professors who are working in natural language processing in our respective institutes. We reached out to researchers who were working on this in Caltech, in other places in Silicon Valley, who are at the cutting edge of this problem, of the summarization problem. And we figured out that there are two types of summarization. One is extractive, one is abstractive. So extractive summarization, what is was done pretty well. What it does is it just picks out some phrases from an article and showcases it to you.
Looking for
But it
keywords.
is, yeah, keywords, it's just some phrases. So when you read that, it's okay to give you a hint about what the article is, but it doesn't make you feel complete, that you really understood or comprehended what this article is trying to say. The meaning level stuff is missing in that. And abstractive summarization is something that can achieve it, but there was nothing. The state of art in abstractive summarization is still behind. Like, we are 9 years into this business, it's still not solvable. So that is something that gave us that, okay, if we want to build this business, the only way to scale this would be at least hybrid. There will be some parts which can be automated, but there will be always a manual oversight that is needed in this process. So that's how we started building this.
And which is, just incredible. And so I want to talk a bit more about that and understand how exactly that hybrid model works. And also, of course, want to then talk a bit about recommendations and how you kind of do some of that. But starting off with this hybrid model, you started off with doing everything totally manually. I'm assuming that, well, how did you scale it? How did you make it work?
So initially, I think one counterintuitive insight that we relied on was that people think that for scaling the user base of a platform like Inshorts, you need to scale the content proportionally, which is not true. And which was a really counterintuitive insight that we got really early, that even with say a 50 stories on the platform, we were able to get our retentions very, very high on the product. We didn't need to have hundreds or thousands of stories on the platform to have retention high. And the reason was that the short form USP for the product, that you'll give short form content, is enough for a large enough chunk of users to kind of come to the platform and get an overview of what's happening in the day. And that's all they want. They don't want anything more. So if you are able to satisfy their needs, that, okay, this is the overview of what's happened today, this is the overview in business, this is the overview in entertainment, this is the overview in sports, they are okay with it. They just want to keep coming to the platform every day just for this. And which is the kind of core insight that we kind of leveraged a lot on. From the scaling process, what we did was that, obviously, we built our own internal kind of, we started building very early on our own internal kind of CRM for kind of managing the content process. So we haven't still implemented any external CRM. Our entire backend of the content engine is internally built.
So this is to recommend content for you to summarize.
Yes. So we have a lot of we have partner content sources which kind of feeds into that system, that kind of automatically recommend and kind of create a phrase-wise summary for each article and what category it is in and everything. And then there is a lot of manual oversight. In the manual oversight also, we follow this 80-20 kind of principle, that 20% articles are going to get you 80% of the views. So make sure those 20% articles are written with very, very high copy of the quality of copy, basically. And that kind of help us manage this hybrid model. So for every decision that manually needs to be made, there is technologically data available for that decision to be accurate. So every decision that is made manually, whether it's image selection or headline wording or choosing an article, everything is data driven. That, okay, these are the 5 headlines that is being used by our different partner sources. This is the headline that works really well. This is that's getting the most traction. Then this is what needs to be kind of put in. and things like that. So similarly for images and everything.
So that's A/B test on headlines, images across
Yes.
okay, and then that's how you
Yes.
kind of
So, yes, but all of this intelligence got built in gradually in the backend
Of
platform. So
course,
it's not
yeah. As it
like,
evolved, and you kind of
yes,
So
yes.
today, when you release an article, you'll have how many versions of the headline and the image do you test out typically?
So in general, it's because of the body of knowledge that's already been created over so many years. We don't have to test out in a lot of cases. So in new scenarios where, for example, in COVID-19, right? So it was a completely new content category that emerged.
Yeah.
So there we needed to do a lot of A/B tests. That, okay, what is working? How are people relating to COVID-19? Do people, for example, on the images, do people respond more to animated image of the virus, or do people respond to an image of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare? What do they respond to? Like, what kind of gets them going in terms of consuming this article? So all of that had to be done.
Interesting. So over time, the people who are doing the manual review process has sort of developed an instinct that
Yes,
you
yes,
rely on, that they know
yes.
this is going to work. What is it?
Yeah, there
Because
is
A/B
there is
testing has a
instance.
cost as well, right? Like, I mean, you kind of,
Yes.
yeah.
So no,
Um,
we built a very low cost way of
I mean, the cost in
doing A/B
terms of your
testing.
audience, right? If you think one's already worse, if you show it to them, you're going to have
Yes, yes,
a bunch of people saying, if you already know upfront, that's obviously better.
yes, yes,
So that's interesting. So you A/B test when it's newer stuff, when you don't know how people react, and then that's when you want
yeah,
to
yeah.
iterate. And now, and I'm sure this was an insight that you kind of reached to through some journey, but you launched a video app called Public. Can you
Yes.
talk us through some of the insights behind this and what made you decide to go in that direction?
Yeah. Around 2017-ish, Inshorts started becoming a profitable business. So we were on the verge of profitability. In fact, Inshorts today is a 50% EBITDA profitable business, and it's scaling well and growing very from strength to strength. Right at the cusp of profitability, we started thinking, where do we start deploying that extra cash that we have available, and what is it that we want to what is the direction that we want to head from here. And the big insight there was that so Inshorts has been a primarily English product. Most of the consumers on Inshorts are English speaking, and the English language dominates that product completely. So the thought process was that, how do we make sure that the large audience, the large internet audience that's been created in the Indian market, because of cheap data prices, the coming of Geo into the market, and the vernacular or the Bharat audience that's been kind of growing very exponentially. What is the kind of information needs for this audience? So that was the first question that we were asking. When we were asking this question, two answers, or the two factors that would influence the answer, was very obvious to us right at the beginning. One was that this audience wanted, and obviously these obvious answers also came to us through various experiments that we ran internally across multiple products that we tested, that people were wanting to consume video content much more than textual content amongst the Bharat audience. So the audience for video content in the Bharat audience was much larger as compared to textual content, number one. The second insight was that uh, those people don't really kind of care about, in terms of information needs, they don't really care about whether RBI repo rate is being decreased or not. But they would care about something which is an after effect of that, that whether they will be able to get access to a loan if they need it in their nearest bank, or whether it's going to increase fuel prices for them, right? Whether it's going to make it harder for them to access employment opportunities, or whether it's going to make cost of living higher in their localities.
So tying this back to your process, you needed sort of a different CRM recommendation engine for this audience.
Yeah, so we were not even thinking of the CRM at that moment. We were just thinking about the right product for this
Yeah,
audience.
how do you
So
start? got it.
Yeah. So we started thinking that, okay, what is the right product for this audience? And that's how we tested multiple products, and the right product came in the form of Public. So what Public is as follows. So Public is basically a hyper-local social media platform wherein uh, in people themselves, people who are local influencers or have access to information and knowledge or local news or updates for the local kind of community can post videos about those events, updates, information, news on the platform, and the local people can consume it. So it was a completely platform approach that
So
we
there was
kind of
no
took.
curation of content there, nothing. It was
No,
just peer to
no.
peer. Okay. Okay.
Yes, it's completely peer-to-peer PUGC kind of platform, and people post content, people source content, and people just post it on the platform automatically. And when we're talking about hyperlocal, it's important to kind of get into the nuances of what hyperlocal really means. India has about 800 districts in India. Each district has about 15 urban centers, and roughly 50 to 60% of India's population lives in these urban centers. Even people who are so-called living in rural areas come to their nearest urban center to access basic facilities like the large market or the large hospital or things like
Right.
that.
Right.
So India has about 2.5 lakh gram panchayats, but every of those gram panchayats is kind of linked to one of these urban centers or has a nearby urban center there or the nodal urban center that they
Yeah.
kind of travel to buy seeds, to buy things like that, to get transport or anything major. In all the major economic activity happens in these urban centers. So the way we kind of built this business was that, okay, eventual vision is to have content at the gram panchayat level, but maybe internet access there is still weak, and it's people are not consuming internet there. But at least in the urban centers, people are consuming internet. And these urban centers, including their rural kind of extended networks,
Yeah.
usually have a population of about 100-150K.
So each one's a pretty
So
big market in its own. You
yes.
look at it as a
So yeah. So how do we kind of, and there is no public space kind of platform for these audiences to get updates about their urban centers, right? So
yeah.
that's where public kind of fits right in. So even local administration or the local DMs or even presidents of market associations or the influential doctors and lawyers and all of these people kind of get onto the platform, build their profiles. They kind of distribute information and kind of communicate with their audiences, and vice versa. So this sort of a um public space kind of platform didn't exist for this audience, and this ties back right back into our initial insight while beginning Inshorts, that information use cases in India are going to be very, very different as compared to what's being built in the valley. And interestingly, public, the kind of opportunity that we went after, Inshorts, the kind of opportunity went after, are unique platforms or unique ways of building consumer tech products that's not been built anywhere in the world. So most of Indian startups, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but usually have kind of copied business models
Right.
from what's been successful abroad. But that's not been the case with us, because the first principles thinking that we were going after is that information use cases needs to be built on insights that are come from India. Whether these will be able to go global is something that we'll have to still test out.
That's different.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, but it's actually working and being successful in India. So public, we launched in 2019, and 2020 we were unfortunately at the right place at the right time. Why I say unfortunate is because COVID-19 was a really unfortunate period for most people in the country. But public scaled really well at that point of time. People needed local information, and there was no platform that could serve them the local information except public. So people really lapped up the proposition of public to get local updates. So we grew exponentially in the 2-3 years of COVID.
Yeah, unfortunate times, but I mean, providing a service that was obviously really needed. But would like to talk a bit more about, launching this time versus the first time with Inshorts, because obviously the way you think about it, the scale, the resources you have, very different, right?
Yes.
So what was your approach here? I mean, it obviously wasn't an MVP approach. Did you start with like one area? Did you pick multiple how did you go?
Yes. So exactly how you said. So we launched with areas where our internal team who work with us were close to, like people come to, there are, so my co-founder, he comes from a very, very small district in Bihar, Kishanganj. Our another senior leader, Tarun Arora, who is the CEO of the company, he comes from a place called Bikaner in Rajasthan. And there are many others in the team who come from very, very smaller towns who kind of would relate to this problem really well because they know people, their parents or their relatives who would be consumers of this product. So we actually launched in these very, very specific locations where we had someone very, very local available in the team. And that's how we started building. So we built our playbook in one district, two districts, three districts, and then kind of scaled gradually.
Makes sense. And then, the other question when you ask about scale is, of course, hiring and how do you think about the culture of the company and how has that changed as the company has grown? So if you can share some insights on that.
So in general, we've been a very, very lean company in terms of hiring. We have never overhired in our journey. And so even today, we are running two platforms with more than 100 million kind of downloads or users who have used us even once. And uh, we have a 30-member kind of tech team. And that also has been scaled probably almost more than 100% in just last couple of years. So when the two products were being built, we've built it with tech teams which are probably around 10 people in size. So we have been always very, very lean in terms of our team building. Obviously, now we are in general almost a 1,000-member team across products and across functions. But mostly that scale has happened in the operations part of the business because obviously there is so much content that's being produced on the platform, created on the platform, so many creators that are active on the platform. To manage them, to kind of have touch points with them is a very, very operating kind of exercise, and that's what needed the team scaling. But apart from those functions, most of the team is pretty lean.
So lean team consistent, you've scaled specific areas, makes a lot of
Yes.
sense. And how would you describe the culture of the company?
So culture is a very, very like kind of
I know, so I hate asking
open
it, but
book.
I also I have to, right? I think
Yeah.
we learn a lot from how people describe their.
Yeah. So I'll just give you some general observations. In general, the culture in the company is off. One thing was that we believe in lean thinking because of whatever we've learned over the past, number one. Second is, I think one thing that we believe in really strongly, as opposed to what we have seen in general, the ecosystem believes in, is the fact that people uh, in general throw people at a problem and expect outcomes. We don't do that. Like we really try to be picky on the problems that we want to fix. So we wouldn't want to solve like 10 problems at a time. We'll want to solve. So it's also kind of tied to that lean thinking thing. But I think that's also something that drives outcomes because when you are
Absolutely.
not throwing people at the problems, you are able to take ownership of outcomes and actually deliver outcomes rather than just expecting that something will work.
No, that's that's a really good way to think about it. I appreciate that. And one more question, I mean, we're talking about content in India. I think I have to ask this. A lot of people say that monetizing content in India is hard. Uh, do you think this is going to change? Do you think content creators can make a living out of creating content? And do you think Inshorts has a role to play in any of it?
So I think there is no one size fits all answer here because there are lots of things that are feeding into this kind of judgment. So, for example, if I talk about monetizing content in general, right? So, if you talk about general journalistic oriented platforms or journalistic oriented content products, uh, a lot of them I think will be able to monetize and scale via the newsletter subscription kind of revenue model. but it won't be a unicorn. They're not going after unicorn opportunities or billion-dollar opportunities, and they won't be billion-dollar opportunities, which is something that we should be able to live with, right? Like, not every business opportunity or everything that you do has to become like $100 million revenue opportunity, right? So I do think that newsletters can make money, but it will be at a smaller scale. And if you are kind of if you're building your business model in a way that you can make money in that smaller scale of revenues, you will be able to survive, grow, thrive, in fact. And there are lots of examples of such companies in India as well as abroad, right? When it comes to creators, I think one thing that we are underestimating is going to soon kick in the creator economy is that large creators will make a lot of money, right? Because they are kind of competing with publishers in a way for audience access in a way. So most advertisers will think of comparing, say, a Virat Kohli while advertising to the followers of Virat Kohli versus, say, a content channel on YouTube or on Instagram, right? So they will actually make that comparison between an individual and a platform almost on a ROI comparable basis. That if I put X amount of money here, how many customers am I going to get? What is the brand uplift I'm going to get? Similarly, if I put this money in this content platform or this channel or this organization, what is the brand uplift I'm going to get? So large creators are in the running for a pie in this money. What is happening is that because of this really promise of becoming a large creator, which is becoming harder and harder as views are saturating on Instagram. Instagram is not going to get infinite views, right? It's going to have a cap on the number of users they are going to have. It's going to have a cap on how much time people are spending on Instagram, right? What more can they do kind of to get more of your timeshare or my timeshare on the platform, right? So what will happen is that copycat kind of content that floats around on Instagram, and creators also thinking that, okay, my one video goes viral and I'm going to have these many followers, and then I'm going to build on that. That problem is going to become harder and harder from here, right? It's going to be a more and more uphill journey, and most content creators won't be able to succeed in that journey. And that is when I think people's expectations of financial outcomes from becoming a creator will start getting affected, because no one is going to give you enough money to kind of survive or pay your bills if you have 5,000, 10,000 followers on Instagram, when there are other influencers who are probably have 500,000 or a million followers who are getting access to that same audience, right? So paying the bills will be much easier for the larger creators. So the smaller creators will kind of get weeded out unless they start innovating on the type of content they start doing, which is very, very unique and exclusive. So I expect most of the platforms to have more diversity of content and more diversity of content creators. And that's the only way they start making money. And most content creators will have to have a decent amount of scale to kind of make money. Uh, Apart from that, I think in Indian audiences don't pay for quality content in general, but those trends are changing. It's still very, very early, but I hope that that trend changes going forward. But it's really hard.
And Deepit, just to close off on this, um, attention spans are reducing. They keep reducing. I actually think that people have always had lower attention spans. Honestly, we are just using tech to hack it. Um, how does that change the way content creation is happening when you have to compete with TikTok or Instagram? I know Inshorts is more focused on knowledge and text, but you're obviously competing for attention versus these other more micro content apps. How do you see that affecting you? How do you see the landscape changing? Any views on that?
Yeah, so I think on the internet, especially on the consumer tech side, uh, the ultimate competition is the competition for time, share, and attention, right?
Right.
So people have limited time on the internet. People are going to use most of it probably doing work because they have to earn money. Apart from that, people are going to have their allocation of time in the way they want to choose it. Most people don't want to choose so much, so entertainment and whatever entertains them is going to kind of win the timeshare kind of market. But having said that, uh, the what is the really key factor here is that uh, the shorter attention span also creates opportunities for people like for companies like Inshorts, right?
Right.
So the expectation of users from what the internet ecosystem is going to, the value that the internet ecosystem is going to add in their lives is not key. I'm just going to be entertained, right? Whenever I'm open, अब मेरा अच्छा time pass हो गया. That's not what
Right.
people are expecting, right?
Right.
Probably 50% of the time they are expecting that, but they have those same needs that existed in the offline world, right? Like
Right.
people used to buy newspapers and probably used to find their time in the loo to kind of read those newspapers, right?
Right.
So it's not that this seeking of knowledge didn't exist or seeking of information didn't exist in the offline world, and the same behavior is going to exist in the online world as well if we are able to build products that kind of are good for the mobile platform or the mobile access. For example, say if you are just commuting from one floor to the other floor in your building, right? uh, that is a that is a micro unit of time that the offline world or the offline information space was never able to kind of
Mm.
penetrate. Internet gives you that access that, okay, this 3 minutes, what is the person going to choose to do? And there we are in the running, right? Like in short, person can open in shorts, right?
Right.
Because for entertainment, they will have those longer hours at the end of the day to kind of watch Netflix and long form content, movies, whatever, right? But in these short use cases, those short occasions of internet usage, information is a very, very strong kind of proposition as compared to anything entertainment.
Understand. And so taking this forward, what's next for you guys?
Yeah. So for us, obviously, right now, our focus is on monetizing the public platform, because on the user side, we've scaled really, really big. And in general, our DNA has been to be very, very laser focused on P&L, monetization, profitability. In fact, we would be one of the most unique companies that way. So there are two levers that I don't know, like it may be me just boasting about the company, but we think two things make us really unique. One is we've always built products that are unique across the world. So, and we made them successful. We've not copied business models from elsewhere. Second
Right.
thing is we've actually, in terms of success, we'll actually crack profitability models on the internet space, which is something that very few startups can actually uh, chest thump about. So,
Right.
so it's the same laser focus we still have internally for public also. We are scaling our revenues really well. And on the other side, we are kind of exploring other opportunities. We keep testing a lot of products internally, always. So our experimental machinery keeps going on and on. And there are lots of use cases that can be handled. One kind of thing that we eventually want to test is whether Inshorts or public has a global audience, and
Right.
it'll be a really proud moment for all kind of Indian startup people if we can actually take a consumer tech brand abroad and see
Right.
an Indian brand being used across the world. But it's still a little bit far. We need to win the India market before kind of taking those leaps. So
And
I think we are in for a longer journey, but we want to build it in a sustainable way. So profit oriented and always revenue focused. At the same time, focusing on first principles in terms of consumer insights.
understand. No, awesome. And to close out, what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you've received in your journey as a founder, or yeah, you've just been a founder all along? So, what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you've received as a founder?
One piece of unfiltered feedback would be it's not always good to be diplomatic. It's not always good to be diplomatic. Sometimes it's really important to cut the frills and just be a direct shooter. So I think that's a feedback that I've received.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Deepit. Really enjoyed our chat.
Yes. Thanks. It's AJVC is something that I really kind of look up to in general as a consumer, and happy to be here.